was wait an hour, tough luck. I mean,
Wow.
that's it. When you're on
Wow.
medical cannabis, if I take my drops, and let's say after 3 hours I have some pain or whatever, I can take a hit out of my vape pen and keep my pain level down.
Oh my gosh.
Now that does two things. I can keep the inflammation down, which relieves my pain, and without pain, you are a much nicer person. You can focus a lot more. You're more the person that you normally are. With pain, you become somebody that's really somebody you really don't want to be.
Yeah, and people don't talk about the amount of energy that pain takes out
Yeah,
of you too. People say, "Oh, well, I'm not sleeping good or whatever." Yeah, that's part of it, but the energy consumption of pain receptors in our body is 2 to 1 of any
right.
others, and that's why you feel so lethargic and beat down all the time because that pain is doing that to you from the inside out.
And I think the other side of it too is the anxiety and the worry and things that people have. That is also the same thing. I
Right.
think when you're more relaxed in general, I think it helps. And I know I've seen that like with my wife that when she has a regime of high CBD, low THC cannabis, she feels better. She works better.
Absolutely.
We get
Absolutely.
along better. It's it's um it's something that I think is important. What I'm saying is that this worked for me. I mean, there were 5 of us that were in the experimental group. After 2 months, about within 2 months, 2 of those people left, stopped taking pills, and started getting on cannabis. One person dropped out altogether, and the other person
Man.
stayed on pills. But the doctors, I still work with the doctors over at Jewett, and they refer quite a few patients to the medical clinic because it just helps with pain. It's something that from their perspective, they don't have to worry about somebody getting addicted, and
Yeah.
that's important.
Well, and one of the things that I'm most excited about is they don't have to worry about somebody overdosing and dying. You know,
Right,
we're
right,
talking about saving lives and getting better, and we're not talking about getting somebody addicted to something and then potentially killing them by accidentally overdosing, which is something that plagues our veteran community, and it's
right,
plaguing our country.
right. I'm all for science, and I'm all for testing it. But I think that we don't, because we have the Schedule 1 drug in the United States. We don't test in the United States. But there are plenty of tests being done on medical cannabis. I'll take Israel for example. We built the whole Israeli cannabis industry.
Yeah,
If you take a look at
we
Israel, you take
and
a
the
look at
United States is what you mean by we.
Oh yeah, by we mean the United States. We are so far. I mean, 22 years ago, the Spanish government came to one of the graduates of Raphael Mershulem, and many people may or may not know this, but since 1964, let me say this again, since 1964, the United States government has been funding research into medical cannabis, but because it
Yeah.
was illegal in the United States, they did it in Israel.
That's so crazy and
Okay.
absolutely true. Everything we're saying is verifiable. Just
Yeah.
all you got to do is look at the information and data that's out there. They've done it through freedom of information requests. That's how they
Right.
got this info.
Yeah, and Dr. Raphael Mershulem was with the University of Jerusalem, Ben Gurion University, was part of this. And one of his graduates, Dr. Cristina Sanchez, the Spanish government came to her and said, "We want to build you a lab." And 22 years ago, they built her a lab in Spain that has been studying cannabis and cancer for 22 years
Wow.
with research studies, just like we would do here in the United States. So when we
Wow.
say there's no research, I think, now, do we need more research? Absolutely. There's a
Absolutely.
world of hurt out there that needs to be looked at. And you can't, you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time. But she's taken a pretty good hunk out of the cancer side. So when I hear people like government officials saying there's no research, by the way, all that research, because the United States government funded it, had to be put into the National Institute of Health database, the NIH
Right.
database, PubMed. So if you go to PubMed, which is what our doctors use to be able to check out, latest and greatest formulas and medications, all that is there. There are over 38,000 studies of medical cannabis in PubMed. By the way, the next most studied drug is only about 1,000.
Wow. I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
there are
nuts.
more studies on epilepsy and cancer than there are on most of the pain meds down here in the United States.
Holy cow. Guys, thanks so much for joining us today on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. Mark MATOZA is our guest. Mark, so if people want to find out a little more information about you or your organization and companies, how can they do that?
I think the first place to go to is Marijuana Aware. Uh,
Okay.
and Marijuana Aware is where we do all our educational materials. sign up for a podcast or a webinar. Excuse me, it's a Zoom webinar.
Absolutely.
Whether you attend or not, you'll get an email that'll open you up to a lot of resources. Every Thursday we do another webinar. Like this Thursday is one on migraines.
Okay.
The Thursday after we're doing one on glaucoma. So every Thursday we take another ailment and we basically dig down on it and talk about how cannabis can be helped or what can be done in that particular area.
Now, does somebody have to had seen the previous webinar to join the next one and know what's going on?
No, they're all because they're all on different subjects. Obviously, we did the first one on pain management. I did the one with you on PTSD, PTSS, excuse me, and PTS. So I mean, there's different subjects that we attend. What is fascinating is a lot of people are attending them week after week because I think they're fascinated as to what cannabis can do.
Right, absolutely. What about social media? Do you have a social media presence at all?
We do, Marijuana Aware, as well as MMTC, Medical Marijuana Treatment Clinics. I get my Florida card. I have five or six different outlets. I think the best thing to do is if anybody's looking for any information, just send me an email. That's the best way of putting it. Send it to Mark, which is MARC, at marijuanamedtoday.com. That's all one word. So Mark, MARC, at marijuanamedtoday.com. And I'll be more than happy to steer you to some resources and point you out as to where to go.
Well, Mark, what you're doing for the patients and the community in the state of Florida is tremendous. And I can't say thank you enough just for educating people. You've made it a more open conversation and a more informed conversation, which is exactly what we need in our community, where people are pushing back. They don't want to talk about – it used to be that people could talk politics, right, and not talk about cannabis. Now it's the exact opposite, where we can talk about cannabis and you can't talk about politics openly. So it's crazy, Joshua, where we're at now.
I moved into a community where most people are over the age of 55, and I did that 3 years ago. We want to live near my wife's son. We have two grandsons. We wanted to be near them, so we just chose to live here. It just seemed to be convenient. And when I moved in and people here heard I was in medical cannabis, and I'd go to different functions, you would have thought Darth Vader walked in the room. I mean, people looked at me like, holy God, look at this guy.
Sure.
Let me roll this forward 3 years. There are over 110 people in this community that have got their medical marijuana cards.
Wow.
I know of more than 150 people who use cannabis one way, shape, and form, meaning they use hemp. Okay. And I cannot go to the clubhouse. I cannot go to a dance without being asked. So Darth Vader turned into one of the stormtroopers, which turned out to be, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That's right.
It's interesting how it all transitioned.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking care of those patients and, helping the community and just helping make our world a better place. Mark, it's been such a pleasure to have you as a guest on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast today. I'm really looking forward to, maybe doing another podcast within the future. Are you scheduled to do any more in-person trainings anytime soon?
Well, naturally, we love doing the in-person training, but I think the real issue is going to be COVID-19.
Right.
We are reluctant right now. Obviously, when we did these seminars, we would attract 50 or more people. So I think to put that number of people in a room is just irresponsible, in my opinion.
Sure.
I don't care what people say. This is a pandemic that is not over, and you can see by the rising spikes of cases and patients and people dying. I don't want to be responsible. My goal is to be the opposite of that. Right. So I think what you're going to find for the rest of this year, minimum, is you're going to find us doing a lot of webinars.
Okay, I think the country may be moving towards that too, as overall, because people have gotten used to this. As crazy as it may think that 2 months, could change the world, but it has. All
my neighbors who didn't know what a Zoom is, now we have cocktail hours with Zoom. So there you go.
That's beautiful.
But I think it's important, Jason, Joshua, to understand we only have one body. What this boils down to is us. This is our body. That's all you have. This isn't a game. This isn't, and don't be influenced by politics or anything else, because you have a family to take care of. You have other people to take care of. I wear a mask, not for me, but for the people around me. And more importantly, I do it because I think it's important that we do everything we can to protect life. I love these people that are pro-life. They're telling me about all this pro-life stuff, but they want the economy to open up. You can open up the economy and you can get people getting jobs and you can get people working without putting them at risk. That's what bothers me. By not using science and doing it the way we did, we put people at risk. And that bothers me because it is as close to genocide as I think it gets.
That. I like it. I mean, you speak very true words, Mark. Very true words.
Yeah. I mean, I want everybody out there to be with us next year if possible, but I certainly don't want to do it because we were irresponsible. Let's put it that way.
100%. 100%. And maybe, who knows? Maybe this time next year, cannabis will be the answer in curing COVID-19 too. we can hope.
Even if they look, even if they come up with a vaccine, I think the anxiety, the stress, all the things around it cause people to get as sick as the actual disease itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
A disease will kill you, but people who don't have it, 1 out of 10 people get it, but the other 9 suffer from stress and anxiety. We can certainly help with that.
We can mitigate that. That's right. Mark MATOZA, thank you so much for joining us on the Veterans for Cannabis podcast, sir. You have been an amazing guest, and it's always a pleasure.
And we'll do another podcast, Joshua.
You got it. You got it.
Okay.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. This is Joshua Littrell signing off.
Line over there, over there. Send the word over there. That the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming. The drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer. Send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there, over there.